Today, we are traveling from Brussels to Paris, and we're doing so by high-speed rail. Cruising through the landscapes at 300 kilometers per hour, we travel from city to city in just an hour and a half. This is Eurostar. Yeah, we need to talk about that. We just arrived in Brussels on this train. Now we're traveling to Paris on this train, the Eurostar. We're at Brussels-Zuid Midi, Brussels South Station. It is not an exaggeration or cliché to call this station a high-speed and international train hub. Whether it's England, France, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Germany, or beyond, you can reach much of Western Europe from this station. Eurostar is the main player here, operating high-speed trains to London, Paris, Amsterdam, or Cologne. Passengers going to the UK have to go through customs and border control at the station, but we're going to Paris, so we can just walk up to the platform whenever we want. There are a few minutes left though before our departure, so let's find some waffles.
First Belgian waffle in Belgium.
Navigating the dark, drab lower levels of Brussels South isn't always super fun, but waffles can fix anything. Here comes our train. It is a PBKA set built by Alstom in 1997. Eurostar seats are reserved, but in standard class, you cannot pick a seat. They are just assigned to you, and so you show up to the seat that's on your ticket. Our standard class tickets, booked a few weeks in advance, cost €70 per person. And it'll be an hour and a half of travel time from Brussels to Paris. These train cars are about 30 years old, but they've been refurbished several times to include everything that you would expect in a modern train. European-style power sockets and USB-A ports, reading lights, sizable tray tables, and small overhead luggage racks. You know, I've seen a lot of people complain about these seats, but the handful of times that I've been on these trains, I've always found them very comfortable. I even fell asleep for a little bit this morning. It's almost like comfort is subjective. I better get a lawyer after such a controversial statement.
Mesdemoiselles, Messieurs, bonjour et bienvenue à bord de cette Eurostar à destination de Paris. Nous sommes Christophe et Sven, vos chefs de bord ce matin.
For the first bit of the journey, we will slowly weave through the Brussels metropolitan area, but once we leave that behind us, we enter a dedicated high-speed line and accelerate to our top speed of 300 kilometers per hour. This train is based on the French TGV. Heck, it's a TGV with a different color scheme basically. The train type we are on is called the PBKA, which stands for Paris, Brussels, Cologne, Amsterdam, and it can operate under 4 different voltage systems. There's also the PBA version, which can handle 3 different voltages and can therefore not run into Germany. The most important thing to know is that this train service used to be called Thalys. Thalys was a name that was deliberately created to not mean anything, but be easy to pronounce in all of the languages that the train travels through. Thalys began operating in 1996. Initially, most of the service was on slower, conventional lines. But as Belgium and the Netherlands opened multiple high-speed lines over the years, service was sped up. Essentially, Thalys was a high-speed rail network with Brussels at its center. The busiest segment is between Paris North and Brussels South stations, and over the years, the network was much more expansive than it is today. Many of these routes eventually disappeared, but the core routes remained. Paris to Amsterdam via Brussels, Antwerp, and Rotterdam, and Paris to Dortmund via Brussels, Loon, and Düsseldorf. The shares of the company were held between the French railways and the Belgian railways, while the actual train sets were owned by the French, Belgian, German, and Dutch railways. The most profitable route was Paris to Brussels, with about half of the company's revenue coming from that route alone. Traveling at high speed, and you barely even notice that we've crossed the border into France. For Lindsay, this was the fastest train she'd ever been on. It's also the fastest train I've ever been on, but I've been on this train a few times before. Interestingly, even though I grew up in Japan, Shinkansen is not the fastest train I've been on because all the Shinkansen trains I've been on were the older models that can't go as fast as the current ones. Anyway, let's check out the toilet. Everything was clean and in working order. These trains also have accessible toilets. While these trains have steps to get up when you board, there are accessibility services available. You have to call 24 hours in advance. Staff will have a ramp ready. There are special wheelchair spaces located near the accessible toilet, and the Eurostar website has a guide that helps people with a range of disabilities, visible and invisible, to take the train. These Eurostar trains also come with a cafe car with a selection of options. If you don't want to order on the counter, there are vending machines as well. I mentioned growing up in Japan, but I also spent a part of my childhood in the Netherlands, and as a Dutch kid, Thalys kind of symbolized the peak of Dutch railroading. It was our high-speed train, the only train in the country that could go the top speed for a while. Thalys was an almost universally recognized name in the Netherlands too, in my experience at least. No matter a person's knowledge of the train system, most people would at least be able to associate the word Thalys with the train to Paris. In a country where trains are synonymous with the colors of yellow and blue, the red just stood out. In all fairness, it's probably why I have trouble with the merger. As you'll notice, the train isn't called Thalys today, it's called Eurostar. The Eurostar is a train service that started in 1994 running through the Channel Tunnel, connecting London with Paris, Brussels, and eventually Amsterdam. The Eurostar brand became world famous, so much so that the Italians had to rebrand their Eurostar train services to something else, and the Eurostar name became synonymous with tunnel service. Well, in 2019, Eurostar and Thalys announced their intent to merge, and the merger was approved in 2022. They picked what their research showed was the name with the most recognition, Eurostar. I remember hearing this and scratching my head. To me, Thalys was a lot more familiar, but that's probably my bias as I am from the Netherlands. I'm not really a person who cares that much about renaming things. It's kind of one of those, look at me, I'm quirky things, if you ask me. Do I prefer calling it National Airport? Sure. But if you call it the Willis Tower, guess what? We can still be friends. My lawyer has even more work now. Even I have my limits though. But I just can't get behind calling the Thalys Eurostar. And it's not because I can't let go, it's because they seemingly can't. See, a brand is more than a name. I mean, how many commercial jingles are living in your head rent-free? If you're at an airport, you can spot a KLM plane without ever seeing the logo. Amtrak has a style guide for what colors you can and can't use on trains and promotional materials. Eurostar seemingly has none of that. They slapped a logo on the trains and called it a day. The ex-Thalys trains are still red, and the old Eurostar trains are still blue and yellow. For a while they were like, we'll say Eurostar Blue goes to London, Eurostar Red doesn't. Okay, but now the blue trains are being put on routes that don't go to London either. So even that distinction is gone. Recently, Eurostar announced that they are purchasing these new gray and green double-deck high-speed trains. I won't comment on how I think they look, other than to say that that means in a few years, Eurostar trains will be either red or blue or green. Now, some of you might say, it doesn't matter what a train looks like, just follow signs to the right platform and get on. The thing is, it kinda does matter what a train looks like. With the glaring exception of North American subway systems, basically every train in the world has some thought put into what it looks like. Eurostar's task was to convince us that two distinct brands that we've both known for 30 years are now one unified brand, and I think they're kind of failing at that. Service is great though, we are right on time, and after one rant about liveries, we're already in the Parisian suburbs. Now that's the power of high-speed rail. At this point, we're sharing tracks with the very frequent suburban service running in and out of Paris North Station. Also, one more thing before we arrive in Paris, kind of a depths of Wikipedia thing. So obviously they make announcements on this train in multiple languages, and the Dutch Wikipedia page about Thalys has a recording of a French conductor trying to speak Dutch, and the caption literally says the French conductor mutilating the Dutch language, and I just thought that was so funny. Bienvenue à Paris, ma chérie. It's not long before we pull into one of the platforms and our journey comes to an end. Paris, Gare du Nord, Paris North Station, the end of the line for us, also Europe's busiest train station in terms of passenger volume. Of course, our time exploring Paris is just beginning. Paris North Station is well connected to the Paris metro system, which we will be using to explore the City of Lights. And we hope you'll come along for the ride. So don't forget to subscribe to Trains Are Awesome if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.